Hey everyone, welcome back. So in this video, we're gonna start making our ball move. So let's get started. Very first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to select my ball and scale it down a bit because it is pretty big compared to our screen. So what I can do is I can make the X, Y, and Z size 0.8. So 0.8, 0.8. Okay, so next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to press the ball and keep my mouse here and press the F key on my keyboard so that we can focus here. Now if you can press the Alt key on your keyboard and press the left mouse button, you can move it up and down. Just press the Alt key on your keyboard and then press the left mouse button, and then you can rotate the mouse and you can move it up and down. So as you can see here, we have a little gap between the ball and the platform, so we can move it at a position so that it will be on top of the platform and there won't be any gap. Okay, so let's keep it there and move our camera to a position as it was previously. So let's move it down a bit by pressing Alt key and the left mouse button, and by doing that we can just keep it in a position that we want, that is suitable for us, and just leave it right now. So now what I can do is I can select the ball, go to Add Component, New Script, and let's name the script, oops, not space, not capital, ball controller, create an add, and then I can double click it to open it in MonoDevelop. Okay, so it has opened in MonoDevelop. Let me increase the font size a bit so that you can see clearly. I think this should be good. Okay, so now let me go to the ball and okay, now I'm going to select the script and drag and drop it inside our scripts folder so that we can stay organized. So just drag and drop it inside your scripts folder. Now we can come back and we can edit our script so that we can move the ball. Okay, oops, actually we have moved it from that location, so it has gone. So we can go to scripts and double click it again, so it will open it MonoDevelop. Okay, so here it is. Now again, save your scene every time you make some changes. File, save scene. Okay, so now what I can do is we have changed our ball. So now, as you can see here, we want our ball to move in a zigzag order. So we want our ball to move either in this direction or in this direction, in this direction or in this direction, like this. Okay, so we want our ball to either move in X direction or in the Z direction as we want. And as you can see that this is the positive X direction and this is the positive Z direction. So we can rotate our camera exactly opposite way so that our X faces in the front way and the Z faces in the front way as well. So again, I can press the Alt key, press the left mouse button and just move it like this so that it comes to a position where it is like this. Okay, and you can move it any position, move it to any position you want. And if you already have this kind of position, then you don't need to do anything else. So now we just need to move it here, 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 here. So every time we press our mouse button or every time we touch on our mobile, what we want to do is we want to change the ball's direction from X to Z and Z to X, X to Z and Z to X. Okay, so that's what you're gonna do from the scripts. So let's go to the ball controller script. Here we're gonna create our very first variable, private float speed. So this is by the speed by which the ball will move. And over here we're gonna give a pair of square brackets, and inside that we're gonna write serialize field. So that means even if it is private, it will show up in the editor so that we can change it from the editor. So if we select the ball, since the ball controller script is here, as you can see, the speed is showing here, but it is not public. Though it is not public, still it is showing here. Okay, so this is what we wanted to do. Now what you're gonna do is, if you select the ball, you can see that here we have a rigid body component attached to the ball. So since we have a rigid body 2D component, not a rigid body 2D, we have a rigid body component attached to the ball, so it can interact and get facilities of the Unity's physics engine. Okay, so we can give the ball velocity in X, Y, and Z directions. And so that's what we're gonna do. We can access this rigid body component that is attached to the ball, and using this rigid body component, we can give velocity to the ball in X and Z directions. Okay, so we're gonna do that. So here I'm gonna create rigid body RB. So this is the rigid body that of our ball that we're gonna access. And here I'm gonna create our void awake function. Awake is called before start. So we can use this awake function to get access to the rigid body. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to write RB equals to get component rigid body and a pair of parentheses. This is the syntax of the get component function. What it does is it gives us access to this rigid body component that is attached to this game object. Okay, as you can see, this script is attached to the ball, and the ball has a rigid body component. So what it is saying is that get me the rigid body component that is attached to the game object. So RB now has this rigid body component. So now by using RB, we can change any properties of this rigid body. Okay, so let's try to do that. So in the start function, let's try to give a velocity to our ball. So let's select RB.velocity equals to new vector3, and now we can give any velocity in the X, Y, and Z direction. So let's give speed amount of velocity in the X direction and 0 and 0 in the Y and Z directions. Okay, so now we are creating a new vector3 in which the X value is speed, which we have assigned here. Then Y and Z value are 0, 0, and we are assigning that to our velocity. So now this will be our velocity. So that means only there will be a velocity in the X direction and the ball will move in the X direction with this speed. So now let us go back to Unity. Select the ball, and as you can see here we have the speed, so we can change the value of speed here. Let's make it 8. Now if I go ahead and run this, you will see that this is the X direction, so our ball will move in the X direction. So as you can see, our ball is moving in the X direction with the speed that we have provided here. If we increase the speed, it will just move with that speed. So now the next thing we need to do is, whenever we click on our screen, we want the velocity, the X velocity to be 0 and the Z velocity to be speed. And then again, whenever we click, we want the Z velocity to be 0 and the X velocity to be speed. Okay, so we're gonna do that by creating a separate function, and that function will be void switch direction. You should always give meaningful names to your scripts or functions or variables and everything, so that later on you can understand whatever this is actually doing. So inside the switch direction, what you can say is, if our ball has a velocity in the Z direction, then we want to make the Z velocity 0 and the X velocity speed. And if it has a velocity in the x direction, then we need to make the x velocity 0 and the z velocity speed. Okay, so we're gonna do that. So first of all, you're gonna check if rb dot velocity dot z is greater than 0. That means z direction, that means the ball has a velocity in the z direction which is greater than 0. That means the ball is moving in the z direction. Then what we can do is we can say rb dot velocity equals new vector 3. So we are changing the velocity of rb. So what are we gonna do now? Now we're gonna give a velocity in the x direction. So now we can say the x value is speed, the y value is 0, and the z value is 0. Okay, so now if the ball has a velocity in the z direction, then we are switching the direction and making the velocity in the z 0 and giving it a velocity in the x direction. And else if rb dot velocity dot x is greater than 0, that means the ball is moving in the x direction, then what I can do is I can say rb dot velocity dot x rb dot velocity equals new vector 3, and now we want to make the x velocity 0, y velocity 0, and the z velocity to speed. Okay, so switch direction will simply change the velocity of the ball in another direction, and that way it will make the ball to move in another direction. So from the update, now we need to call this switch direction function whenever we press our mouse button or whenever we touch our screen. So in order to detect mouse click, we're gonna say if input dot get mouse button down 0. So that means whenever the 0th mouse button is pressed, then it will call this thing. And what is the 0th mouse button? The 0th mouse button is generally the left click on our mouse. The left button on our mouse is generally the 0th mouse button. So whenever we click our left mouse button, this thing will be called. And what do we want to do whenever this thing gets called? We just want to do switch direction. So whenever we are pressing the 0th mouse button or the left mouse button, we want to switch direction. And this works for touch as well. So let's go now to Unity and check whatever we have done. So as you can see, now the ball is moving in this direction, and if I, oops, not here, we need to right click here. So let me move into a top. So now you can see the ball moves, and if I right click, if I left click, the ball moves to X. If I click again, the ball moves to Z, and again and again. As you can see, hope you are seeing here. Let me make it a bit bigger so that you guys can see. So click, 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 click. So as you can see now, whenever I click on the screen with the mouse or touch, the ball changes its direction and moves in a zigzag way. So that's what we wanted to do, and we have achieved that. So in the next video, we're gonna do a lot more stuff. So see you in the next video.